Okay, introduction to the research process. Let's start. Okay, let's talk about the research cycle muna. Normally, dahil nga cycle yan, ano, paulit-ulit lang. But normally, it starts with identifying the research problem. Okay? After identifying the research problem, ito yung pina-assignment ko sa inyo last time, okay? You try now to design, okay? How are you going to collect the data? Okay, so pag-aaralan natin yan, the different ways on how to collect the data. Okay, yan yung tinatawag natin na instrumentation and research design. Once you have identified the research problem, okay, and designed, okay, how you are going to collect the data for research, you're going to analyze and interpret the data. Okay, after analyzing and interpreting the data, you can now come up with a conclusion. And this conclusion, okay, should answer the research problem. Okay. Now take note, okay, dapat fluid lang, okay, yung cycle natin na to. No, if you are trying to come up with a research, okay, this is one of the initial tests that you are going to conduct. Okay, let's say you have a question. I'm going to research on the effect of COVID-19, okay, in our educational institution. O, di ba? Maganda 'yon. Now, you try to come up with a design, kanyari, okay? Will you be able to get the information that you need? Okay, let's say that the information that you need will be based on their financial statements. Okay, so ayun, will that be available? Okay, will you be able to collect the data? Okay, not only that, is there enough data? Ayan, is there enough data, okay, for you to be able to analyze and interpret? Ayan, tama ba yung pagkaka-English ko? Okay, kasi kapag dito pa lang naputol, kunyari hindi ka makaka-collect ng data or there's not enough data, then hindi maganda yung research problem mo. Okay, hindi ka makakapagsulat. It's not yet researchable. Okay, o so kunyari pumasa siya dito. Okay, pero pagdating dito, patay. Paano natin siya i-analyze? Okay, wala tayong kompletong parameter. Okay, or for example, wala tayong mga limits or table of interpretation. Wala tayong, let's say, basis. Okay, like for example, malinaw na theoretical framework, ayan, or literature. If these are not available, then you may not be able to analyze or interpret the data. Sometimes, no, you have the tools available in your design, but then, okay, how to use these tools is not given, no? So it's not given, that's why you cannot analyze the data that is available to you. Ayan. Or, siguro na-analyze mo, you were able to interpret it, kaya nga lang, since the data is not enough, okay, it's not enough for you to come up with a conclusion. So, you cannot answer the research problem. So, this is the initial test. Pag nag-isip kayo ng research ninyo, will it be able to pass through the research cycle? Okay po? Now, what's the sequential steps in the research process? Okay, first, okay, you generate the idea. This is what we call the generating phase. Kaya nga nagpa-assignment ako, you form a group, okay, para mag-brainstorming kayo. Okay, or kung wala nang brain, kahit na storming na lang siguro, 'di ba? You identify an idea, okay, of interest. This one is very important because it's difficult to write a paper, okay, about an idea that you're not interested. Okay, magre-research ka sa isang bagay na ayaw mo naman. Okay, and then you justify why a study, no, on a particular topic is needed. Why a study is needed? Dahil ba wala pang nag-study dito? Or siguro ba may application ito na relevant sa field mo? Okay, will it be a basis for policy? And or will it be a basis for decision making? Okay, will there be beneficiaries of this research? Okay, so yun, you have to justify that. Dito pa lang, if you cannot justify, okay, that a study is needed, then your paper will be rejected. So, balik ka na naman dito. Okay, you should generate another problem, okay, or another idea. Malinaw po? Okay, so ayan. Now, once you have the idea, okay, of, you have identified an idea of interest, and then you were able to justify, okay, the need for a research. You start reading the related literature on the topic. Now, when we say related literature, okay, this could pertain to, journals, ayan, textbook, okay, so textbooks, and especially past researches, and past researches that are related, no, related to your topic. Pag minsan dito tayo natatagalan, you have a very nice idea, okay, ang ganda nung idea of interest natin, na-justify ninyo, okay, na-justify ninyo yung need for a research. It's just that there's no related literature available. Okay, this one is very important because you're going to use this to interpret the results. Diba? Titignan mo, did your results, no? Did your results match what is found in the literature? Okay? O kung hindi man siya nag-match, bakit kaya? Diba? So, ayan. If, okay, your idea, okay, is, ayan, interesting para sa'yo, na-justify mo, and then meron siyang related literature, you can now go to your next item, which is developing the problem. Okay, so you try to identify and define the variables to be used. Ayan, pina-assignment ko rin ito. What are the possible variables that you're going to use in your research? Okay, after identifying the variables, okay, you develop the theoretical or conceptual framework. Okay. So, for example, yung research natin, no, ako na lang, yung research ko nun ay gusto kong makita, okay, let's start here na lang. I'm interested in the area of accounting and finance. Okay, accounting and finance. Ayan. And psychology. Ayan, behavior. So, ilagay ko, psychology. And then, naisip ko, eto, gusto kong pag-aralan ang mag-focus sa finance at psychology. Risk. Very important in decision making. At saka, ano kayang magandang variable na galing sa psychology na relevant siya sa risk? Okay? So, you have the risk tolerance and you have your self-efficacy. So, these are now my variables. Okay? So, and after identifying the variables, you develop the theoretical or conceptual framework. Mamaya, i-discuss natin yan. Okay? Pero as of this point, ang gusto ko lang malaman ninyo ay ano ba itong theoretical or conceptual framework. Okay? Yan actually, made-develop mo yan galing sa review of related literature mo. And then based on your reading, you're now going to come up with a framework which summarizes the relationship, no, of these theories and your variables. Parang ganon. Anyway, may details niyan mamaya. And then you formulate the major, okay, ito yung pinaka-problem mo, major and specific problems. Okay, sir, may pinagkaibahan ba yan? Meron. Major, this is your research problem. Okay, ito yung normally makikita mo sa title. Yung specific problems, ito yung pag nasagot mo siya, okay, once these are solved or answered, okay, you will be able to answer the major problem. Okay, so like for example, your major problem has something to do with financial performance. Okay, you want to study the financial performance of companies. Okay, but how can you measure that? Okay, you come up with specific problems like you may measure what's the level of their liquidity, mga indicators natin, no? Liquidity, profitability, or maybe solvency, and so on and so forth. If you're able to assess these different areas or factors, then you can now assess or answer the question on financial performance, which is your major problem. And then you formulate a hypothesis. Ano ba yung hypothesis? It is an educated guess. Okay, so after coming up with the problem, uli sasabihin mo, ano ba yung guess mo doon sa financial performance ng mga companies na to? Is it high or low or very high, very low? Okay, so yung mga ganun. Anyway, we have a separate area for that. Okay, number 3, okay, you now come up with the design, okay, or the procedure. Okay, ito na yung tinatawag natin na start ng methodology. Okay, so you try to identify the participants. Okay, this is what you call the population and locale. Okay, you describe what research methodology will be used. Ayan, will it be descriptive? Ayan, experimental ba siya? Ayun, you develop, validate, okay, gawa ka ng reliability test, okay, on your data gathering tools. Okay, when we say reliability test, normally ang ginagawa natin, dito na lang ako magsulat. Okay, you have your validity test, and you have your reliability test. Kung ikaw yung gumawa ng questionnaire, you have to conduct this. Okay, you have to come up with a validity index. Yan, mag-research kayo paano ba yan. But this is a tool. No, it will tell you how valid your questionnaires are. Okay, if you are going to use this tool, or kunyari mayroon kang ibang tool na inadapt, okay, pero to a different set of respondents, no? Okay, you have to conduct a reliability test. Normally, ang ginagamit naman natin na tool dito, you have your Cronbach's, okay, you have your Cronbach's C alpha. And Cronbach's alpha. Okay? So, ayun. After validating, okay, and conducting a reliability test on your tools, you're now going to specify the procedures. Ito yung data gathering procedure mo. Like, are you going to conduct a survey? Are you going to conduct an interview? Are you going to float questionnaires? How? Where? When? Bakit? Okay? And then you plan how the data will be treated. Okay? Dito na po papasok yung ating statistical tools. Okay? So, are you going to compute for the frequency or the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, yan, correlation coefficient, okay, ANOVA, t-test, okay, and so on and so forth. Yan. Now, okay, after you have designed, okay, actually parang dyan lang yung lesson natin eh. Okay? Hanggang dyan lang yung proposal eh. Pero kunyari nandun na tayo sa part 2 ng thesis niyo. You're now going to conduct the collection phase. You proceed collecting the data and then you implement the research design. Okay? Very easy. So, what is found here in number 3, because this one is just your plan. Okay, in number 4, you are now going to execute the plan. Okay, in number 5, okay, after collecting the data, you're now going to analyze. Okay, let's go back to number 3. How are you going to analyze? Okay, andito siya. Okay, you go back to how your data will be treated. Okay, so dito papasok yung mga statistical tools po natin. Okay, then you apply appropriate, no, qualitative and quantitative technique. Sa atin, sa College of Accountancy, okay, because our researches has to be, they have to be finished for a short period of time, most of the time, ang ginagamit natin ay mga quantitative research lang. Okay, ayun. And then you record, okay, you tabulate the data code. Ayan. And tabulate the data. saka natin siya i-interpret. Di ba? Okay, that is now your step number 6. Okay. You interpret results in terms of how they answer the research. Ano ba to? How they answer the research problems. So, for example, you have the major problem and then sasabihin mo this research aims to okay, evaluate, ayan, or ano pa ba yung mga terms na ginagamit natin, analyze the relationship of variable A and variable B. Okay, so that's the major problem. Specifically, okay, this research will answer the following question. What is the level of variable A? What is the level of variable B? What is sorry po. What is the relationship of variable A and B? So kung ito yung arrangement, no? If that's the arrangement of your specific problems, then okay, your interpretation and analysis should also be arranged this way. Ayan, chronological pa rin. Okay po? Okay, so yung ibig sabihin, interpret results in terms of how they answer the research problems. Okay, and then, okay, you relate the results to the theoretical framework of the study. So, based on your research, ayan, let's say you came up with the frequency, siguro the means, and maybe the standard deviation, or your correlation, diba? Correlation coefficient. Okay, what's the meaning of this? Okay, and then you relate that with your literature dun sa nabasa mo. Do they coincide? Okay, or do they negate your readings? And then you explain why. You also have to confirm, no? Through coming up with additional interviews siguro or follow-up researches. Okay? And then you come up with a conclusion and a recommendation. Again, okay, one-on-one correspondence, no? If you have 3 specific problems, we expect that there will be at least 3 corresponding conclusions and recommendations. Pero minimum yun. If you want to come up with other recommendations, you can also do that. And then you try to communicate. Okay? You communicate the results. You prepare the written report of the study, present an oral report or public lecture. Okay? You can publish the result or report. Yung iba naman hindi na pinapublish, instead the actual outcome, no, will be applied immediately na ganun. Normally ang uso ngayon, they conduct a seminar or a workshop wherein the basis for that workshop is the output of the research, no? Like for example, the output of the research is to come up with a set of recommendations or maybe a student development program. O yan, so seminar ka agad para sa mga students. Okay? Criteria in selecting a research problem. Ayan. Very important. Okay? Novelty, syempre, dapat unique. Okay? Para researchable. And avoidance of unnecessary duplication. Ayan. Bakit? Baka kasi marami ng researches na ganito. Hindi mo na ma-justify. Okay, bakit kailangan mo pang mag-research ulit? Okay? Importance of the study to each respective field. Okay? For example, we are accountancy students, no? Kailangan importante sa field natin. If you are a forensic student, or let's say AIS student, FMA student, it should be relevant to your field. And of course, interest should be there because it's so hard to find the drive. Ayan. Or it's so hard to write a paper on a topic that you're not interested. Ayan. Training and special qualifications. Okay, syempre, we are still students, no? Normally in actual practice, as a researcher, you should have the necessary skills and expertise, but as students we're still developing, and we consider this subject, no, your research process, as part of our training. And availability of data is a must, okay, para hindi lang drawing yung research natin. Even the methods should be practical. Okay, and just in case you'll be needing some special equipment, this equipment should be available, no? Like for example, if you're going to conduct, let's say, the effect of a special diet in the, ano ba, in the flexibility of your tissues, o yung mga ganun, no? Kung paano na didilate yung mga vessels natin. Do you have an equipment to measure that? So, tingnan natin mabuti. Sponsorship and administrative cooperation, okay? Ito, importante ito, lalo na pag nagkatrabaho na kayo or practitioner na kayo. You can look for a funding agent. For example, no, so how do you do that? For example, you have a research on on COVID-19 vaccine. Ayan, COVID-19 vaccine. Ayan, tingnan mo. Okay, baka maraming gustong mag-sponsor sa research mo. Di ba? O, pera din yon. Ayan, cost and returns. Di ba? Sa decision making, the benefit should justify the cost. Okay? Malay mo, ang laki ng cost ng research mo, pero konti lang pala yung application niya. Okay? Hazards, penalties, and hardships. And let's not forget to include the ethical, let me write that down, ethical implications. Implications. Sorry po. Anyway, for example, ang research natin ay effect ng cosmetics, ayan, sa mga balat natin. But then you have to use animals, okay, as test subjects. Okay, baka may magalit, no? Magalit ang PETA. Okay, or for example, you're going to develop a vaccine, but then you have to test this on humans, and that may not be ethical. Okay po. And of course, time factor is very important, no? Especially for us students. Ayan, as students, you want to be able to finish your research, okay, during the semester, or at least 2 semesters man lang. So, you cannot come up with a topic that will require you to use case studies. Okay, case studies or qualitative techniques. Qualitative. Because most of the time, they will involve a lot of time. Ayan. Characteristics of a researchable problem. Okay, sabi niya, problem or topics that are confusing or conflicting. Siya, researchable kaagad yan, di ba? Unusual phenomenon. Unexpected happening. Okay? Or maybe there is an existing theory that you want to check if it is applicable to a certain group of individual. Okay? Maybe there are current issues or problems. Yan. Okay, like for example, mga scandals, mga fraud, kaya you want to research on those. And there are previous studies and researches. Because there were already previous studies and researches, okay, it means that the topic is really researchable. Okay, you might want to duplicate that, but not to be exact, no? Like for example, you might want to duplicate a previous study, but this time on a different time period or on a different group of people. Yan, iba naman yung population mo. And then, if there are interesting observations and personal experience. Like for example, there is a theory na, let's talk about self-efficacy, okay, or your self-belief. Okay, there was a theory that, well, okay, self-belief or self-efficacy okay, is directly related to age. Yan yung mga nabasa ko. So, the older one gets, no? Habang tumatanda siya, mas nagiging may tiwala siya sa sarili niya. But then, okay, the opposite was observed, okay, for stock investors. Okay, let's go back. The opposite was observed in stock investors, okay? Somehow, yan, especially for online stock investors, hindi siya directly related. Meron siyang inverse relationship. So, interesting, di ba? It does not coincide with the theory. So, researchable yan. Okay? Guides in choosing a topic, hindi nawawala yan. It should interest you. Somehow, it should deal with current issues and be specific. Ayan, to your area of knowledge or area of expertise. Sa akin, I suggest it should be related to your course. It attracts the reader, no? Para kanino ba itong mga researches na gagawin natin? And it's flexible in nature. It should be able to evolve. Ayan, gagamitin ko na naman yung favorite word ko. And it's flexible in nature. Kumbaga, posible na magbago yung results mo because of, let's say, changes in available information, or maybe in time period, no? Malay mo yung yung applicable nung 1990s, hindi na applicable ngayong mga 20s, mga 2000, ganon. Okay po. Ayan. Let's talk about your conceptual framework. Ito talaga yung kailangan nating tutukan sa presentation na to. Sabi, while the theoretical framework is the theory on which the study is based, the conceptual framework is the operationalization of this theory. Let's talk about the difference of theory muna and concept. When we say theory, okay, hindi pa siya na-prove. Pag na-prove yan, magiging concept na. Diba? Ang concept, okay, kapag applicable na yan sa lahat, nagiging law. Okay? Kaya ng law on gravity. Okay? Kahit saan applicable yan. Pero kung applicable lang siya sa part lang ng population, hindi lahat, hanggang concept pa lang siya. Hindi pa siya nagiging law. Kapag hindi pa siya na-prove kahit kailan, okay, marami pang mga questions, theory pa lang ang tawag doon. Most of the time, ang ginagamit natin ay conceptual framework. Okay? Yan. In some books, ang tawag natin dito ay paradigm. Anyway, it is considered as the direction of the study or the researcher's own position with respect to the problem. Okay? Direction of the study. Okay? It is the researcher's model for the conduct of the study. It also shows the relationship of the different constructs. I-discuss natin lahat yan mamaya, isa-isa, that the researcher wants to investigate. Okay? Ano ba ang construct? Okay, this is clearly defined. Sabi niya, a construct is a clearly defined concept. Nako, magiging madugo ito. Let's continue, ha. A concept is a label, ayan, that is applied to things with similar characteristics or attribute, okay? Things that seem to belong to the same category. Like, for example, in terms of kind, size, shape, okay? Ano ba yung concept ng ng quadrilateral? Meron siyang 4 na corners at 4 na sides, okay? Ano ba yung concept ng small, medium, large, and OMG? Okay, so, ayun. And, ayan, concepts have many dimensions. Nadadagdagan. Okay, like for example, ano ba yung pinakauso ngayon na concept? Yung concept ng, eto na lang. Concept ng ng financial performance. Ano yung mga dimensions ng financial performance? Okay? Pag-usapan natin ito. Ang cube, ano ba yung mga dimensions niyan? Okay, para masabi mong cube yan, dapat meron siyang length, may width, meron siyang height. Okay, what about financial performance? Okay, sa field natin, pwede nating sabihin performance yung mga areas that defines a financial performance, okay, of a company, like liquidity, profitability, okay, you have your solvency. This could be your dimensions, okay? Or for example, okay, let's talk about the concept of personality of a accountancy student. Okay, ano yung mga dimensions na gusto mong sukatin doon sa personality niya? Pwedeng physical dimensions, okay, pwedeng emotional dimensions, okay, pwedeng cognitive, ayan. Depende sa kung ano yung nabasa mo, kaya kailangan magbasa talaga kayo. Okay, especially doon sa magbasa kayo ng mga related sa variables sa study ninyo. Naku, mas madugo na naman to. Some things are not easily pictured because they are not material or tangible in substance, such as yan, dyan kayo magaling. Okay, satisfaction, attributes, racism, love, these are real in the sense that they exist and have tangible effects on life. Okay, they can make an impact or manifest to people and objects. The words used to describe things that exist analytically, they really exist, no? But not directly observable, are called as constructs. Okay, and to observe constructs, we must rely on some of their constructed measure. Okay, and ang tawag natin dito ay indicators. Okay, so balik na naman tayo. If we consider financial performance as a construct, then we can also say that liquidity, the level of solvency, the level of profitability, okay, can be considered as indicators. Or for example, no, let's say intelligence. Ito na lang, isa lang para simpleng-simple lang. Your intelligence as an accountancy student. So, COA student intelligence. Okay? Ano yung mga indicators ng intelligence natin? Siguro yun yung IQ. Okay? Pwede rin siguro ang EQ. Pwede rin siguro yung academic, academic performance. Okay po? So, yun yung mga indicators natin. These are empirical attributes of variables that can be observed and measured. So, yung pinaka-importante dito, it can be measured. So, paano mo kaya susukatin yung intelligence? Ang sukatin mo, yung mga indicators ng intelligence like EQ, academic performance, okay? O kunyari, academic performance, parang malabo pa rin yun eh. Ang pag-usapan na natin, final grade or midterm grade as an indicator of academic performance. Okay, so ganun. Variables are aspects of those phenomena that change. Example, yung income. Ayan, is a variable. Variable of what? Financial performance. Okay? It is a factor that changes or varies in different circumstances. Okay, so, di ba, yung income, pabago-bago yan. Okay? It is affected by revenues o kaya expenses. A conceptual framework. Ayan, graphically, drawing tayo. Graphically presented in a research paradigm, ang dami na, no? Research paradigm shows the relationship among variables that are investigated in a study. Sana may example na yan. May example tayo mamaya. Bilisan lang natin to. Dependent variable, alam na ninyo itong mga to. Pag sinabing independent variable, it cannot be influenced. Okay? Pag sinabi nating dependent variable, this is the variable that is influenced by the independent variable. Pwede nating sabihin na ito yung cause, ito yung nag-cause, at dito mo makikita yung effect. Ayan. Moderator or intervening variables, these are variables that comes between, ayan, the dependent and independent variable. And mediated, okay, the effect of the independent on the dependent variable. For example, ganito, gawa tayo ng madali lang na na framework. Titignan natin, let's say, yung effect ng number of hours ng study. Okay? This one is your independent variable. The relationship of the numbers of hours in your study versus the academic and your academic performance. Okay, so this is your independent variable, and this is now your dependent variable. What is the moderating or intervening variable? These are variables that affects, okay, the relationship between the two. Like for example, meron bang effect talaga ang gender? O, di ba? Balita ko mas magaling daw ang mga babae kaysa sa mga lalaki. O, ayun. Or for example, okay, maybe another moderating or let's say intervening variable will be the ano ba? Family income. Mahati yan sa poor and very poor. Siyempre, meron din tayong rich and very rich. Yan, above average, mga ganun, di ba? Middle class. Okay, so this could be considered as moderating or intervening variables. Okay, so this one is an example of a research paradigm. Ito na po yung conceptual framework natin. Okay, so you have the cause, effect, and you now have your moderating or intervening variable. This is what you call, dito sa UC kasi dalawa yung ginagamit natin. You have the IVDV model, IVDV. Ito yun. Meron din tayong tinatawag na IPO, okay, wherein you have your input. Paano ba? Input, process, and you have here your output. Input, process, output. Okay? Let's have some example. Ayun. For example, these are your independent variables. Okay? And that's your dependent variable. You want to analyze the relationship of teachers' job satisfaction preferences. Okay, so what are your independent variables? Siyempre, you have your personality of the teachers, okay? You have the satisfaction profile and the correlation, okay? Sometimes, this correlation, since it is already a relationship, siya actually yung nandito sa gitna. The relationship, okay, of these variables. Pwede rin po yun. And what might affect this correlation or relationship? You have the gender, ethnicity, maybe the relationship or the level of job, the relationship of job satisfaction preferences is affected by the educational attainment, or maybe with age, no? Baka mas satisfied yung mga mas matatanda, yung mga ganon. Also, years of teaching, ayan. This could be your moderating or intervening variables. Okay? Formulating a research paradigm. Okay? Ayun, kanina pinakita na natin yung IVDV model. Okay, you can also use your input, process, output. Input, okay, you can have here your initial variables. Okay, you have your initial variables. We use your input, process, output if we cannot establish the independent and dependent variable. So you have here your input, and then what will be the process that you will do, no, yung statistical approaches mo and tools mo, ganun. And then what is your expected output. Ayan. O for example, gaya kanina, no, if you go back on this if you go back to this slide, this could be your input. Okay? This correlation siguro can be your process. Okay, together with your frequency, means, and so on and so forth. And then your output could be the relationship. Ayun. So, based on your model, ganun din dapat yung pagkakadiscuss natin sa theoretical framework mo. So, for example, no, another example will be, balik tayo kunyari dun sa sinulat ko sa paper ko. Mine is risk tolerance. Ayan. Bakit ayaw sumunod ng kamay ko. Okay, so you have your risk tolerance as my input. Okay, you also have your self-efficacy as part of my input. Okay, and then I have here my process. Okay, so you have my frequency, means, you have here the correlation, and then my output will be the relationship, okay, of these two. Pwede rin po yun. Okay? Ayan. Formulating the research problems and hypothesis. Ito, madali na lang. Criteria in research problem formulation. Is it clear? Okay, dapat malinaw kung ano talaga yung nire-research mo. Does it provide adequate focus and direction for research? Okay? If you cannot come up with a clear paradigm or conceptual framework, ibig sabihin, hindi malinaw yung direction. Does it identify the key factors or variables in the study? Okay, that's why in your assignment, no, when I ask you to come up with a title or a topic, my first question is, what are the variables that you're going to use? Okay, or you're going to research on, because if you cannot identify these, wala tayong magiging direction. Okay? Now, after coming up with your major problems, ayan na, you can now come up with your specific problems. Each specific problem should be completely a research unit. Okay, so yan talaga yung mga susukatin mo. Because if you are able to answer specific problems, gaya ng paulit-ulit ko nang sinasabi, okay, you can answer your major problem. Ayan. Interpretation of data must be apparent, okay, in each specific problems. And it must add up to the totality of the main problem. So, let's say you have one major problem and then you have three specific problems. If you were able to answer all these specific problems, okay, you will be able to answer your major problem. Example, major problem. I want to get the relationship, no? Relationship of, let's say, level of happiness. Level of happiness and academic performance. Okay, what are my specific problems? Number 1, what's the level of happiness of my respondents? Number 2, what's the level of academic performance? And then number 3, what's now the correlation of happiness and academic performance? Once I have the correlation, syempre, you cannot come up with the correlation unless you have the level of happiness and level of academic performance. Okay, so once you have 1 and 2, you can now answer number 3. Once you know the correlation, you can now conclude the relationship of these two variables. Okay po? Ayan. Formulating the hypothesis. Ewan ko kung uso pa ito. Pero this is a predictive statement. An educated guess. Okay, parang tentative answer lang. And you're going to test if these hypotheses are true. Okay? Why do you need to come up with a hypothesis? Well, number one, it provides focus. Okay, and it tells the researcher what is or what are the relevant data to gather. Aside from that, okay, it will keep the researcher to be objective. It will keep the researcher objective. O, basta it enhances the objectivity of the study and it provides direction or focus. Pare-pareho lang po yan. Okay, anyway, still on formulating the research problems and hypothesis, the criteria in constructing the hypothesis, sabi niya, should be simple, specific, and clearly stated. Okay, like for example, your hypothesis is number one, the level of happiness is very low. Ganun lang, madaling intindihin. Stated in an empirically testable form. Ayan. Is it true or false? So, meron kang statistical tool na gagamitin. Kung low ba talaga or high. Diba? Baka naman simpleng average lang, malalaman mo na kung tama yung hypothesis o hindi. Related to the existing body of knowledge. Okay? Ibig sabihin nito, this is related in your readings. Meron po tayong related literature. Yun. Indicate the specific nature of connection between among variables. Okay? Of course, from the beginning, this should have been established in our design, in our paradigm. No? Nasa loob dapat yan. And be formulated from the specific questions. Okay? Kaya nga, kunyari, specific question number 1. Okay? What is the level of happiness of the respondents? My hypothesis, di ba? The level of happiness is low. O specific question number 2, what's the level of academic performance? Okay? Maybe your hypothesis could be the academic performance is very high. Yun po yung ibig sabihin ng formulated from specific questions. Okay, so that's it. Maraming salamat po.